My name is Serena Caldwell. I'm 38 years old. The text came through during my morning meeting with the Costa del Sol development team. We were reviewing the final plans for the new spa complex, a $40 million project that would add another jewel to Coastal Paradise Resort's already ridiculous list of amenities. My phone buzzed on the conference table, and I glanced down just long enough to read my brother Derek's message. Soldier Beach Shack. You never use it anyway. Found a buyer willing to pay $180,000. Closing next week. You're welcome. I stared at the message for exactly 3 seconds, let the words sink in, then lifted my eyes back to the architect's presentation. The spa complex would have 17 treatment rooms, an infinity pool that seemed to pour straight into the Pacific, and a meditation garden filled with native coastal plants. Much more interesting than whatever Derek thought he'd just accomplished. My phone buzzed again. Family group chat this time. My mother. Good. It was an embarrassment. That old thing made our family look poor. Derek did you a favor, Serena. Lauren, my sister, chimed in almost immediately. About time someone in this family made a practical decision. That beach house was always a waste. Then Derek again. Seriously, you should be thanking me. $180,000 for that dump is a miracle. I'm taking my 10% finder fee, BTW. That's only fair. I typed one word. Okay. Then I muted the chat and slid the phone face down. The thermal system for the pools will use geothermal heat, the architect was saying, laser pointer circling a diagram. It'll maintain optimal temperature year-round while minimizing energy costs by about 18%. This was the kind of problem solving I appreciated. Numbers that made sense. Systems that fit together. Not a grown man who thought he'd done me a favor by selling a piece of land he had never bothered to understand. Across the table, my assistant Patricia caught my eye. She sat with her stylus poised over her tablet, neat handwriting already filling my digital notes. She'd seen the texts, of course. She saw everything that came across my devices. 8 years as my right hand had taught her which messages required immediate action and which were just family noise. She raised one eyebrow by a millimeter. Her version of asking, "Do you want me to handle this?" I gave the slightest shake of my head. Not yet. The meeting ran another 90 minutes. We approved the final spa design, set an 18-month timeline from groundbreaking to grand opening, and walked through the projected revenue impact. Even with conservative estimates, the spa would pull in about $8 million a year once it hit stride. I signed off on the $112 million total project budget without hesitation. Anything else? I asked as the last slide disappeared from the screen. Just the quarterly board meeting next month, Patricia said, scrolling through my schedule. And your interview with Hospitality Today about the expansion. They're particularly interested in the story of how you built Coastal Paradise from a single property to a 12-resort portfolio. Of course they are, I said lightly. Everyone loves an underdog story. She smiled faintly. Shall I forward the interview questions by Friday? They better already be in my inbox. They are. She paused. Also, your brother has called the main resort line 4 times in the last hour. Reception is asking if they should put him through. No. Understood. Another small pause. Should I prepare anything? Legal, perhaps? Not yet, I said. Let's see how this plays out. By the time I walked back to my office overlooking the main resort grounds, Derek had called 6 more times. Mom had sent another dozen texts, each one more breathless about how smart Derek was to finally get rid of that eyesore. Lauren added a few more jabs about how the beach house had always dragged the family image down. The beach house in question was a 3-bedroom cottage on a prime piece of oceanfront. I'd bought it 14 years ago for $220,000 when I was 24, with every penny I'd scraped together from 3 jobs in college and 2 years of punishing hours at an investment firm. The cottage itself had been small and tired, yes, weather-beaten, floorboards that complained, paint faded by sun and salt, but the land it sat on, that was different. I spent 13 years quietly buying everything around it. The old motel 2 lots down, the shuttered restaurant next door, the vacation rental across the street with the sagging balcony, the empty lots everyone thought were worthless because the area was declining. Piece by piece, I assembled 73 acres of oceanfront real estate, while my family assumed I'd stalled out on the very first property. Then I built on it. Coastal Paradise Resort now stretched across those acres. 2 luxury hotels, 48 private villas, 3 restaurants, 2 golf courses, a marina, a shopping village, and soon, That spa we'd just approved. The land was valued north of $900 million. We employed 20,400 people. Last year's revenue was $147 million. And right in the middle of all of it, on the most valuable acre of the entire complex, sat my dump, my embarrassment, my waste. I had kept the cottage modest on purpose. Fresh paint, good bones, nothing flashy. From the resort's main paths, it looked like an old survivor the developers had kindly left alone. Guests sometimes took photos of it, called it charming, quaint, vintage. None of them knew it was my favorite place in the world. The place I went when I needed to remember how little I'd started with. The place where the first impossible idea had taken shape. Derek thought he'd sold it for $180,000. I sat down at my desk, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering water and manicured lawns, and pulled up a set of internal reports. The spa was only one piece of the expansion. There were villa upgrades, marina renovations, a new restaurant concept in development. Real projects, real responsibility, real numbers. My phone buzzed again on the corner of the desk. I didn't have to look to know it was family. Probably Derek, trying to sound magnanimous while informing me of his good deed. Probably Mom, reminding me how gracious I should be. Probably Lauren, applauding Derek for taking initiative. They all thought I was still the girl who bought the little shack because she couldn't afford better. They had no idea I was the one signing off on the 9-figure budgets wrapped around it. A shadow moved in the glass of my office door. Patricia stepped in, tablet in hand. Michael called, she said. He has a situation involving your cottage and someone claiming power of attorney. Of course he did. And? I told him you would want to be briefed personally. She hesitated. Shall I have him come up? I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting back to the distant outline of the cottage amid the resort's shine. My brother had just tried to sell the heart of everything I'd built, using authority I never truly gave him, to a buyer whose business model I already understood. This wasn't an accident, this was a test. Not yet, I said. Give it an hour. If Derek is as desperate as I think he is, we'll have more information by then. Patricia nodded. Understood. As the door clicked softly shut behind her, I picked up my phone, scrolled briefly through the family group chat full of laughing emojis and patronizing praise for Derek's miracle deal, and then closed it again. They had no idea who they were playing with. And for the first time in a very long time, I found myself almost looking forward to a family problem. By the time I walked back into my office later that afternoon, the missed calls counter on my phone looked like it was trying to set a personal record. 6 more from Derek, 4 from Mom, 2 from Lauren, a couple from Dad, which was unusual enough to be almost funny, and then 1 from an unknown number I instantly recognized as Pacific Ventures' area code. I ignored all of them. Instead, I stood at the window overlooking the resort, the 2 gleaming hotel towers, the golf courses stretching green and perfect against the coastline, the village of boutiques and restaurants, the private villas perched like quiet jewels around the cliffs. All of it built around one modest cottage my family had spent the past decade calling quaint, embarrassing, or proof you'll never get anywhere if you don't listen to us. The same cottage Derek had just tried to sell for $180,000. My desk phone rang. Patricia's voice came through the intercom with surgical calm. Michael Chin on line 2. He says Derek called again. He's becoming insistent. Of course he was. Put Michael through, I said. A soft click, then Michael's voice, polite but strained. Ms. Caldwell, apologies for bothering you directly. We've had a situation. I'm aware, I said. Derek's involvement? He called the front desk, the reservations line, engineering, the marina, and finally corporate HR. A pause. Claiming he had full authority to sell the cottage and that we were obstructing a valid transaction. My jaw tightened. What did you tell him? That we would need to verify ownership before making any decisions. Good. Don't tell him anything more. Michael hesitated. Ms. Caldwell, this may escalate. I know. I allowed myself the smallest smile. Schedule a meeting. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Conference room. Invite Derek. And who else? Legal and anyone else who needs an education. Michael almost chuckled. Understood. I hung up just as my cell phone buzzed again. Derek. I let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed 30 seconds later. Again. Patricia buzzed back in. He says it's urgent. Fine, I sighed. Patch him through. A click. Then Derek's voice. Loud, frantic, breathless. Thank God, Maya, we have a serious problem. I didn't bother correcting the name. Derek was not capable of adjusting his worldview quickly enough to fit reality. Besides, it helped that he kept underestimating me. What happened? I asked, my voice calm as still water. The buyer, the Pacific Ventures people, they got some call from a manager at your resort saying the property isn't actually for sale, that there's some ownership problem. How strange, I murmured. Maya, this is a disaster, Derek snapped. I already spent my finder's fee. I put a deposit on a new Audi. You need to fix this right now. Fix what exactly? The ownership issue. You're not good with paperwork. You never were. But I need you to call the resort and explain that, yes, you own that cottage, and yes, you're selling it. I leaned back in my chair, amused. Why would I do that? There was a long beat of silence on the other end. What do you mean, why would you do that? Because the sale is happening. Because I arranged everything. Because $180,000 is more than that shack will ever be worth. Derek, I said, how did you arrange to sell a property you don't own? A dramatic inhale. I have your power of attorney, remember? You gave it to me 5 years ago. I gave you limited power of attorney to sign for package deliveries, I corrected, not sell property. Legal details, he snapped, instantly defensive. Bottom line, the buyer is threatening to walk away. I need you to fix this. I closed my eyes briefly. Who is the buyer? Pacific Ventures LLC. They're paying cash, and we have to move fast. These investors don't wait. Pacific Ventures, of course. They specialized in predatory acquisitions around luxury developments, snatching undervalued parcels, flipping them to the developers, then pocketing the difference. Usually, I admired their ruthlessness. Today, it was almost poetic. Let me make some calls, I said. I'll handle it. Relief detonated through the phone. Thank you. I knew you would. And hey, when this goes through, maybe you could finally invest the money properly? I know a guy. I'll keep that in mind. I hung up before he could finish his sentence. Patricia appeared in my doorway again, tablet in hand. Michael has confirmed the meeting for tomorrow. And security? Standing by quietly. Good. I stood, stretching slightly. This will be illuminating. Patricia's mouth twitched into a rare smirk. Educational. My cell buzzed again before she left. Another text from Mom. Serena, sweetheart, don't be difficult about the sale. Derek handled everything so well. It's about time you let him make decisions for the family. I didn't respond. Mom followed it up with another. And honestly, that shack was embarrassing. Margaret Henderson said last month, is that where Serena lives? How quaint. You know that's code for poor. Patricia saw me stiffen and waited in silence. It must be very hard for her, I said dryly. Her eyebrow raised. Do you want me to prepare anything special for tomorrow? Bring copies of the property documentation. And for fun, include the original acquisition timeline. Ah, she said softly, understanding. So he can see the 13 years he ignored? Exactly. The next morning, I dressed differently. Not in the power dresses I wore to board meetings. Not in the tailored clothes that signaled wealth before I spoke. Instead, I chose simple slacks, a plain blouse, minimal jewelry. I wanted Derek's assumptions intact. I wanted him to walk into that conference room thinking I was the same quaint sister he could manipulate. I parked my 5-year-old Subaru in the guest lot. Derek's new Audi, gleaming, silver, and overconfident, was parked in VIP. Perfect. Inside the resort's soaring lobby, with its 30-foot ceilings and Pacific Ocean backdrop, Derek was pacing near the concierge desk, checking his watch and muttering under his breath. When he saw me, his expression flickered between relief and condescension. Finally, he said, I've been waiting 20 minutes. These people take punctuality way too seriously. His eyes flicked over my outfit, disappointment crossing his face. This is what you wore? Good to see you too, I said. He waved that off. Come on, let me handle this. You tend to get emotional. I bit back a laugh. Lead the way. We took the elevator to the executive floor. Derek strutted ahead, practically humming with self-satisfaction. He thought he was about to negotiate a higher price with the resort. He thought he was playing chess. He wasn't even playing checkers. The conference room was already occupied. Michael Chin, perfectly composed, Robert Kim, our head legal counsel, and 2 senior executives. Derek didn't recognize any of them. He would soon. Michael rose politely. Mr. Chin, he said, shaking Derek's hand. Then to me, Ms. Caldwell, please have a seat. Michael gestured to the visitor side of the table. Derek strutted into the seat beside me, like he was CEO of the universe. I took the chair next to him, the chair usually reserved for clients and outsiders. The show would start soon. Let's clear this up quickly, Derek began, puffing himself up. My sister owns the cottage. I have power of attorney. We're ready to move forward with the sale. The resort needs to stop interfering. Michael exchanged a brief glance with Robert. Mr. Chin, Michael said gently, there are complications you may not be aware of. Complications? Derek scoffed. It's a shack. Just let us sell it. Robert slid a map across the table. The resort outlined in blue. The cottage squarely in the center. Derek blinked. This can't be right. The resort was built around the cottage, Robert said, starting 14 years ago, when the first parcel was acquired. Derek's eyes widened. Wait, so the resort wants to buy the cottage? He grinned, the shameless greed lighting up his face. Well, fine, let's talk real numbers. 500,000. No, 750. Michael's expression did not change. Mr. Chin, he said, the resort isn't buying the property. What? Why not? Robert folded his hands calmly. Because the resort already owns it. Derek froze. That's impossible, he said. My sister owns that property. Michael turned to me. Ms. Caldwell, he said, would you like to clarify? I folded my hands neatly on the table. The cottage is owned by Coastline Holdings, LLC, I said. I founded the company. I am the sole owner. The room fell silent. A long, stunned silence. You, Derek whispered, you're lying. Robert slid the deed forward. My name in black and white, filed, recorded, undisputed. Derek stared at it like it was in another language. You built all this? He asked, voice small. I did. He let out a laugh, thin and panicked. But you drive a Subaru. So? You wear Target clothes. And? You never said anything. You never asked, I said gently. Michael cleared his throat. Now, Mr. Chin, regarding your unauthorized attempt to sell property you do not own. Security knocked on the door. Derek flinched. I didn't. Security didn't touch him. They didn't need to. The sound of their knuckles against the conference room door was enough to make Derek flinch so hard his chair scraped loudly across the floor. Michael simply nodded toward the hallway. Mr. Chin, he said evenly, you're not being detained. You're free to leave the resort on your own, but the legal team needs to brief you before you exit the property. I'm not going anywhere, Derek snapped, his voice cracking. There's been some kind of mix-up. This is a misunderstanding. Robert Kim, who had the patience of a monk and the precision of a surgeon, slid a new document across the table. Derek stared at it without picking it up. This is the document you presented to Pacific Ventures, Robert said. The one you signed, using the limited power of attorney you were given years ago. It was legal, Derek insisted, but it came out weak, shaky. I was acting on her behalf. You were acting outside the scope of the authority you were granted, Robert corrected. This constitutes attempted real estate fraud. Derek's mouth fell open. Fraud? It's not fraud if I didn't know. That, Robert said, is not how the law works. Derek looked at me then, eyes full of something raw and unfamiliar. Not guilt, not remorse. Fear. Maya, he whispered, help me. I took a breath, calm, controlled, steady. I already did, I said. I showed up, I'm here. But this? I tapped the forged contract. This is your doing. He shook his head, almost violently. You're not listening. I thought you needed the help. I thought you couldn't afford. That, I cut in gently, is the problem, Derek. You thought. You assumed. You decided who I was based on what you wanted to see. He looked down, breathing hard. I continued. For 14 years, I built an empire around that cottage. I bought every parcel of land one by one. I took risks. I worked impossible hours. I built Coastal Paradise Resort from the ground up while you were bragging about car sales and telling people I worked with computers. You never asked what I actually did. You never asked how I built my life. You assumed I was failing because I didn't flaunt what I had. That's not fair, Derek muttered. You hid everything. I didn't hide, I said softly. I lived my life. You just never bothered to look at it. Michael cleared his throat, a subtle reminder that this wasn't a family therapy session. Mr. Chin, he said, I'm going to need you to step outside with security. We'll address next steps there. No, Derek barked. Not until Maya tells me she's not actually going to let you people. Derek, I said quietly, they're my people. His head snapped toward me. What? I own this resort. He stared like he'd never seen me before. But you, the cottage, your car, your clothes. You confuse simplicity with failure, I said. That's on you. Security stepped forward, not threatening, just ready. Robert added, Mr. Chin, the resort will not pursue charges today, but you must leave the premises. Derek swallowed hard, then muttered something like, I didn't know, under his breath, as security escorted him gently out of the room. His new Audi key fob made a soft clatter in his trembling hand. The door clicked shut. Silence washed over the conference room. Michael let out a long breath. Well, he said, that was enlightening. Robert sat back with a calm expression. Ms. Caldwell, we'll draft the revocation of power of attorney immediately. Thank you, I said. Patricia, who had slipped in during the chaos with her tablet, raised an eyebrow. That went about as expected. I smirked. Very on brand. A notification pinged on my phone. 3 new texts from Mom, 2 missed calls, 1 voicemail from Dad, and an entire block of frantic messages from Lauren. I ignored them all. Serena, Patricia said quietly, your family is going to show up. I know. Do you want security ready? No, let them come. Because the truth was, Derek wasn't the only one who needed to be educated. They came exactly 3 hours later. Reception buzzed the office. Ms. Caldwell, there are 4 people in the lobby insisting they know you. They say they're your family. Send them up, I said. Patricia shot me a look that said, are you absolutely sure? I nodded. Let them see. 5 minutes later, Mom, Dad, Lauren, and a very pale Derek spilled into my office. They all stopped short when they saw my space, the corner office, the panoramic ocean views, the awards, the framed blueprints, the subtle but unmistakable signs of power. Lauren made a choking sound. This is your office? To be fair, I said, you never asked. Mom's hands fluttered toward her chest. Serena, sweetheart, Derek says you own the resort. All of it. Is that true? Yes. That's not possible, Dad said slowly. You never told us. Why would I asked evenly. You weren't listening. Mom burst into tears. Dad made a strangled noise. Lauren just stared at me like I'd spoken in ancient Greek. Derek spoke last. I messed up, he whispered, voice hoarse. I'm sorry. And for the first time since the meeting, something inside me softened. Not much, just a little. Derek, I said gently, you didn't just try to sell my property. You tried to sell my history, my first investment, my reminder of who I used to be. And you did it because you assumed I was small. He swallowed hard. I know. Dad stepped forward, voice breaking. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you say anything? Because it wouldn't have mattered, I answered. Because you all decided a long time ago who I was, and nothing I did fit that version. Mom wiped at her eyes. We love you. You love who you thought I was, I corrected quietly, or who you felt comfortable believing I was. No one argued, because they knew, because it was true. Now, I said softly, if you'd like to know me, the real me, you're welcome to. But I won't shrink to fit your expectations again. Ever. No one spoke. They just stood there, the 4 of them, seeing me fully for the first time in their lives. And I felt, finally, utterly free. No one said anything for a long moment. It felt like all the air in my office had gone still, as if even the ocean outside had paused its breathing. My parents, my brother, my sister, they all just stood there, seeing me. Not the version of me they'd crafted over the years, the simple, unambitious, practical daughter who supposedly lived in a quaint little shack because she didn't know any better, but the woman who built everything around them without ever needing their applause. Dad was the first to break. He cleared his throat, a rough, uneven sound. Serena, he said quietly, I don't understand how we missed all this. You didn't miss it, I said. You dismissed it. Lauren flinched, like the truth hit her physically. We didn't know, she said softly. You didn't ask, I repeated. Mom wrung her hands together. Her voice wavered. Why didn't you tell us? We could have supported you. I raised an eyebrow. Mom, 2 days ago, you were embarrassed that I owned a cottage. Today you're proud because you know the resort is mine. Does that sound like support? Her face crumpled, and she covered her mouth to hide the sob. Dad moved toward my desk, stopping halfway like he didn't know if he was allowed to get closer. Serena, sweetheart, we're sorry. For a second, just a second, I saw the man he used to be when I was little. Before pride and image and status swallowed him, before he began measuring his children by who made him look the best at dinner parties. We should have listened, he said. We should have seen you. It was the closest I'd ever heard him come to admitting failure. Thank you, I said quietly. I appreciate that. Derek stepped forward next. Admittedly, he looked like he'd aged 10 years since the conference room disaster. Maya, Serena, I'm sorry. Not just for the cottage, for all of it. He swallowed, hard. For treating you like you didn't know anything. for assuming you'd failed. You all assumed, I said softly. I simply didn't correct you. Lauren spoke next. Is there anything we can do? I leaned back against the edge of my desk, arms crossed loosely. Not defensive, just grounded. That depends, I said. Do you want a relationship with me because I'm rich or because I'm me? Mom shook her head fiercely. Because you're you. I held her gaze. Then it starts with honesty. She nodded, wiping her face. Okay. And boundaries, I added. Real ones. This isn't a movie. We're not going to magically go back to family dinners and pretending everything was fine. This is going to take time. Dad exhaled, shoulders lowering. We can do that. Then let's start small, I said. Get to know the real version of me, not the one you imagined. Come to the spa groundbreaking if you want. Come to a board meeting, have dinner, ask questions, listen when I answer. Lauren blinked. Board meeting? I shrugged. If you want to understand my life, that's where it is, not in the assumptions you've been repeating to each other for years. There was a long pause, then Dad nodded slowly, solemnly. We'd like that. Something loosened in my chest. Not forgiveness, not erasure, just a quiet shift, a beginning. But we weren't done. Mom, who had been trying to look brave, glanced toward the door where Derek had been gently ushered out by security earlier. Serena, she said in a trembling voice, is Derek going to be in trouble? Legal trouble? I inhaled. He could have been, but no, I'm not pursuing charges. She sagged with relief. But, I continued, he's not walking away clean. I picked up my phone, tapped Patricia's extension. She appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. Yes, Ms. Caldwell? Has Robert handled the Pacific Ventures fallout? Completely, she said. They will not pursue legal action, but Derek is permanently flagged in their system. Mom clutched her chest. Flagged? Patricia smiled, polite and vicious in the same breath. It means they'll never work with him again. Mom nodded shakily. That's fair, she murmured. There was another long silence, as if everyone was adjusting to the new gravitational center of the family. Finally, Dad said, So, where do we go from here? I turned toward the window, letting the late afternoon sun spill across the office. Below us, the resort bustled, staff moving with purpose, guests laughing near the pool, the ocean stretching infinite and steady. We go forward, I said, differently, honestly. Lauren nodded. We'd like that. They left slowly, unsure, humbled, still dazed. When the door closed behind them, the office felt bigger, not lonelier, just expansive, like I had taken back space that once belonged to the girl they overlooked. Patricia re-entered with coffee. How are you feeling? She asked. Tired, I said, but clear. She nodded. Your mother texted again. I picked up my phone. One new message from Mom. Serena, I really am proud of you, truly. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. I stared at the words for a long moment. They weren't perfect. They weren't enough to erase years, but they were something real, something earned. I typed back. Thank you, Mom, I mean that. Patricia tilted her head. You'll let them back into your life? Maybe, I said, but on my terms. That night, when the office finally emptied and the resort lights glittered like a necklace across the coastline, I walked down to the cottage. My cottage, the first seed. The quiet beginning everyone mistook for an ending. I brewed tea on the old stove, sat on the worn couch, and let the sound of waves fill the room. Through the window, the resort glowed, an empire rising around a modest home no one thought mattered. I smiled to myself, a soft private curve of the mouth. You don't need anyone to see you to build something extraordinary. You just have to see yourself. And for the first time, my family finally did.